Hello, everyone, and welcome to Ask Your Injury Lawyers. And we actually have a special program to you where we are just temporarily moving away from our typical segment, talking about personal injury law, to talk about specifically the business interruption insurance and all of these claims that are being denied. I know the media is covering it a lot, so we decided to sit down with Dan Buttafuoco today. Daniel, thanks so much for joining us today.
Hi, Rob. How you doing? I see I have a little bit of glare. Should I fix the light here or what?
You know what? From what I can see, I think you're okay. I mean, but if you'd like to shift, I'm sure you can.
Let me just try something.
Yeah, sure. So while Dan is sort of shifting around, just to give everyone some context, today we're going to be talking about something that the media is covering, and I know that is top of mind for many, if not the majority of businesses out there, and that's this business interruption insurance as it relates to all of these claims being denied. So I know a lot of businesses right now are struggling. And then to have their claims denied when they thought they had the right coverage is, a lot of businesses are in panic mode. So Dan, let's just get right into it. Should they be in panic mode, or is there an alternative potential option here for them?
Well, this is actually a very interesting question, Rob, because business interruption insurance is something that any business would have when they purchase their liability policy, their general liability and business policy that they would have either on their building or on their business. And, you hope you never need it. It almost never comes up. It's not expensive coverage, sort of thrown in as an afterthought. And what it does, I looked at a couple of policies today, is it typically provides for a determined period of income loss that will be covered in a case of a catastrophe. The most obvious one would be if the business burns down in a fire. So, for example, if you had a restaurant and there was a fire, very common in restaurants, the business burns down, and while you rebuild, during the time that you're closed, you can collect loss of income, your monthly income. If the business makes $100,000 a month or whatever, and if you have insurance for that, depending on your coverage, you can collect that for the determined period within the policy. Many policies have 1 year, or it could usually be less. So that's what business interruption insurance is. It's for the loss of income in case the business is interrupted.
Now, are all businesses required to have this type of insurance, or is this something that's a sort of like an elective?
Businesses are not really required to have any insurance except workers' compensation insurance. So it's an elective, but most businesses do have this coverage. It's part and parcel of being a good business person to have this type of insurance because, bad stuff happens and the insurance industry is there to protect us. And you buy this coverage in case you need it.
Now, I know after the SARS virus, they made some exceptions and they added the virus exemption, right?
Well, I see you've done your homework.
I have.
The interesting thing about a business interruption coverage is that insurance companies, they're not stupid, and they can be very heartless and uncaring, however. They go to seminars and they trade notes, just the way trial lawyers trade notes, and they try to do what's good for their business model. And they are always trying to restrict coverage. And when we had the SARS epidemic, approximately 2005, 2007, one of the lawyers was intelligent enough to say, hey, maybe we should be really careful in case this epidemic comes around again, or a worse epidemic, a pandemic comes around, and we're going to be in big trouble paying these claims. So what they did is they inserted a clause into the business interruption policies, basically saying that we call it the pandemic exclusion. You're not covered if your business interruption, if your income loss is as the result of a disease pandemic. And that's the pandemic exclusion.
But wait a minute. So what's the point of this conversation here if in fact there's this clause, this sort of disease or pandemic clause that states that it's the exceptions to the rule, does that mean that all businesses now are sort of dead in the water?
Well, you would think. I mean, we had our own business interruption insurance, and we had our own loss of income from this COVID-19 problem. And we filed a claim. Basically, you call your broker and you say, look, we want to put in a business interruption loss of income claim. And we were denied on the basis of the pandemic exclusion. So you would think that, and most businesses I've been talking to, and I've been talking to quite a few of them, you would think that there is no coverage. And that's what the insurance companies want you to think. However, we have found a way around this business interruption pandemic exclusion. We have found a way that we believe with litigation, and it's going to take litigation, but we have a legal theory which we believe circumvents this pandemic exclusion rider.
Now, listen, you've made a career of going against big insurance companies, and as a result, your firm has done quite well on behalf of your clients. So I know that you're speaking from a position of authority when you say that you've found sort of I don't want to call it a loophole. Is that the way, right? Can I say loophole?
A loophole has a negative connotation. I mean, this is actually a good legal theory that we believe helps businesses in a time of need. And I can talk about that if you'd like me to.
Yeah, I would. And while you do, if you can also answer this question as part of that, is if a business has already filed a claim and it's been denied, does that mean that they can't refile and there's no option for them?
Well, refiling isn't going to cut the mustard here. It's not going to matter. You refile until the cows come home, you're not going to get paid. It's going to take litigation. And in fact, litigation is forming even as we speak. We were in contact with a class action firm. Actually, they reached out to us because of our reputation and because of our internet presence. Mm-hmm. They wanted us to be part of this litigation. They are going to be what's called the steering committee, in which they're going to be in charge of the discovery aspects. Well, basically what's happening, there are about 150 insurance companies in America with about $850 billion in reserves. And they're going to try very desperately to protect those reserves and not pay these claims. However, as we all know, we live in a time of tragic consequences. And during this pandemic, we were in practically a recession, if not a full-blown depression, if this continues. And businesses are struggling. Many businesses are going under. So there's going to be tremendous pressure, public policy pressure and judicial pressure on these insurance companies to pay these claims. And if we have a viable legal theory to get around this pandemic exclusion, which we believe we do, we're going to get these claims paid. But it's going to require strength in numbers. It's going to be a gigantic sort of a mass litigation, sort of like mass tort litigation, except this is not technically a tort. This is technically a breach of contract. And it's going to be what's called a multi-district litigation. So it's going to be a lot of cases in one gigantic lawsuit that are sort of consolidated, not really the correct term, but that gives you the idea. Sure. Sort of consolidated in this one mass litigation before a handful of judges, either federal court or state judges. We'll see how that goes. Yeah. And already some of that is starting to happen. Yeah. And what we're going to do is we're going to be stockpiling a bunch of client claims to add to this litigation because there's strength in numbers. And what we think is going to happen is there's going to be a settlement that's going to be forced because the pressure is going to be too great and the litigation is going to be too ferocious and fierce. And we're going to be at the forefront of that with a number of other firms. And we think we're going to win. And I'll explain why in a minute.
Yeah. So is it that in the event that obviously you guys win this incredible case on behalf of all these businesses, anyone that has a case with one of these firms that you're saying, by default they also win, and then also for any businesses that were not did not file a claim, did not link up with an appropriate attorney, can they still benefit from this? How does a business get involved?
Well, you're going to have to be part of the multi-district litigation in order to get the benefit of it, because what's going to happen is going to be probably, we're not exactly sure what it's going to look like, but what's probably going to happen is there's going to be a finding on liability somehow. Either there's going to be a judicial ruling that affects all of the cases, or there's going to be a global settlement. And that's only going to determine whether there's coverage, right? Most likely. Gotcha. It's sort of like the way the claims were handled after 9/11, when there were, 3,000 people that were killed in the September 11th attacks.
Mm.
There was one giant well, actually, that was sort of different. First level of that was different because the government awarded benefits. But in the follow-up litigation, there was pools of money that were appropriated, and sort of a matrix was created with an administrator who was able to apportion who got what. Well, what we think is going to happen here is going to be very similar to that.
Mm-hmm.
We think it's going to be, first of all, a determination of liability, either 100% or something less than that. And then the real battle is going to start, which is on the actual loss of income that you sustain, because each individual client's case is going to be different. And that's where we come in, and we're going to have to make the case for what income they lost and whether it was from this pandemic shutdown. People sometimes have a bad year. It has nothing to do with current events of what we're claiming. So we're going to have to be able to prove, that's the key word, we're going to have to be able to prove that the income loss is from this particular business interruption, and that's covered within the policy. So there's a number of things that are going to happen. It's going to be practical.
Is there a sort of like a minimum? Is there a threshold here? Is this only for the larger businesses and corporations? Do small businesses also fit the bill for what you're talking about?
Oh, yeah. I mean, whether you're a single practitioner, massage therapist, if you have the coverage, or a chiropractor or a dentist. I talked to my dentist today. He's very interested in getting on board with this because I actually need some dental work. And I know he's closed because he says he's not essential. He told me, he says, my wife and my daughter consider me essential, but the government doesn't. So anyway, he's closed. So I know he's losing income.
Yeah.
And I don't know what he's doing with his staff. I know we're having problems in terms of business interruption. Fortunately, we're able to function at least probably to 60% capacity. We're not really sure. But a lot of non-essential doctors, my neighbor's a cardiologist, he's closed. My other neighbor's a woodworker, he's closed, his shop is closed. So all of these people are going to have to prove that the loss of income for this particular time period is something that is from this virus and from this pandemic and from the shutdown, actually, the government shutdown, and not from some other reason, such as people going on vacation and not, hiring woodworkers or not having dental work. So it'll be some kind of issue there.
Gotcha. We have a question that just came in, and it's that they're asking, is there any risk to the business owner for sort of joining this group?
No, because what we're doing in this multi-district litigation is we're taking these cases the same way we take personal injury cases, which is on a contingency fee, which means that you don't owe anything unless the case settles and you get paid. And the lawyers are going to bear all the risk. Now, we think we're taking a risk. We don't know how this is going to work out. It's not a slam dunk, right? But we think we have a really good shot at it. And we also think that there's strength in numbers. So the more cases that we can stockpile together, the greater the liability risk to the insurance company and the greater chances for a settlement. So one law firm that we spoke to already has 200 cases that they're bringing. And he's going to probably be lead counsel. He's the guy that reached out to us. I think you remember, you were part of that discussion.
Yep.
With all of my lawyers were also part of that discussion. And there's going to be other groups of plaintiffs joining. And so right now, we're amassing claims, and we're going to be joining that litigation alongside. And so, no, there's no risk to the business owner. The lawyers bear all the risk. The lawyers bear all the expenses. And the more claims we can sort of consolidate, because most of these claims aren't going to be that gigantic. So you're not going to be able to get your local business lawyer to do this. And even if he was to do it, let's say you had a big enough business that you could go to your local business lawyer. What's going to happen is these cases are going to be pulled from him, and they're all going into the multi-district litigation.
Yeah.
And he's not going to be able to practice in Philly, where some of these cases are consolidating, or in Chicago, where there's another group consolidating. So you're going to need to be part of this multi-district litigation. I just want to say one more thing. I reached out to some of my friends in one of the largest commercial firms on Long Island, and they are sending us, meaning my firm, Butterfuq and Associates, all of their business clients. So they're not even doing them. They're giving them to us because they understand that the best way to handle this for their clients is to have trial lawyers involved in this. And we're connected at the top echelons with the steering committee lawyers and people who actually have reached out to us to be part of this group. So we think, and we're convinced that this is the best way to go for any client. No risk, best chance of a win, and hopefully best chance of a global settlement.
For everyone tuning in right now, I'm on with Dan Buttafuoco, and we're discussing the business interruption insurance claims. It's a hot topic right now, and we've got Dan, who's been going toe-to-toe, head-to-head with all these insurance carriers for many years now. So he has a tremendous amount of experience and a tremendous amount of authority to pull from to speak with authority on this topic. Now, Dan, we've got another question coming in. It has to do with something that you just discussed, but this is coming from the West Coast here. Let's see here. Where's this question? Here we go. Are there many firms handling these cases? Now, I'm assuming this person is asking because this person's from the West Coast. You're a lawyer from New York. So are there many firms around the country handling these types of cases?
No, but there will be. You're going to start seeing commercials, but we're in the beginning phases of this. So we're encouraging people to join our group. Why wait? Let's be some of the first cases filed. And it doesn't matter where you are. You could be in California, you could be in Alaska, you could be in Hawaii. They're all going to end up at the same places. So it really doesn't matter. We're not going to be filing these cases where my particular home office is, which happens to be in New York. They're going to be filed the way any multi-district litigation is done, which is going to be, there's going to be a general complaint that covers all of the claims, which is filed in the main court. And then there's going to be sort of an abbreviated complaint that is particular to each individual client. So there'll be like a test case, and there'll be all of the other cases that sort of tag along with that.
Gotcha. Another question.
A lot of work.
Yeah, it sounds like it. I mean, this is why. I mean, obviously, even just from listening to you, it's not recommended for businesses to try to do this by themselves. This is going to take a tremendous amount of legal work, a tremendous amount of litigation. Businesses are simply not set up to be able to handle this stuff. Here's another question that comes in. Is there a risk from the government? There are so many stories of government targeting business owners if they don't comply with their rules and opening before they are told to do so.
No, there's no risk from the government. I mean, even Governor Cuomo got on the TV the other day and said that he cannot even enforce the law if people were to open when they're not supposed to open. And there's no such law against closing. But the only law would be against opening. And as in terms of handling these cases, there's no risk from the government. In fact, the government has come out in favor of forcing the insurance companies to pay these claims. There've been a few pronouncements to put pressure on the insurance companies, but the government, because we live in a democracy and we have a constitution, your government cannot force these insurance companies to pay. And believe me, they are going to fight like crazy to not pay these claims. Anything the government would do at this point would be considered an ex post facto law, which is not allowed. It's unconstitutional. We can't make a law that affects behavior that already occurred and changing it. So while the government can pontificate and they can use a bully pulpit and they should say insurance companies should pay, it's the right thing to do, and it is the right thing to do, it's not going to make any difference. What's going to be required is a judicial resolution. We're going to need a lawsuit. We're going to need a really big, gigantic lawsuit. And it's going to have to be won or settled, sort of exactly the way class actions happen. It's going to go down exactly like a class action. Now, it's not technically a class action, because in a class action, every individual class member is hurt in the same way by the same exact thing, and usually for a very small amount. And that's what a class action is.
Gotcha. Now, for businesses that are listening to this and they'd like to learn more, our small business, you mentioned before, like the massage therapist, he's thinking, well, this is just not affordable for me. I can't afford an attorney to review my policy or to help me file a claim. How much does it cost on the front end to the business owner to involve someone like you?
Well, nothing. We'll review the policy for free. I'm already doing that. And all of the policies are basically saying essentially the same thing. Now, there's 50 states involved, so the policies are slightly different in all states because some states have an insurance department that regulates these things and other states don't. It falls under, other categories of administration. Some don't administer at all. There are heavy-duty insurance states like Connecticut. That's why we have names like the Hartford, because a lot of insurance companies are coming out of Connecticut. So they have a major regulatory situation there. And those are very pro-insurance company venues. But these cases are not going to be brought there. And these insurance companies are going to have to live with the ruling of the multi-district litigation, whatever that is, or a settlement. So, there's no cost to anybody to email me and to email the policy. I'm already contacting friends, relatives, family members, and neighbors who have businesses. I have neighbors that have a marina, others that have a woodworking shop, others that are cardiology offices, others that are, accountants, and close friends that are chiropractors and doctors and massage therapists. And they're already sending me their policies to review. And what's going to happen is it's going to come down to an interpretation of the policy, because we didn't get a chance to talk about it, but there's another clause, which is the clause of business interruption involving government shutdown. So it's going to be a question of whether the shutdown was from the pandemic or was it shut down from the government forcing a closure. And that's where the litigation is going to lie. I'm not going to give away too much of the secrets here of what our legal theory is. But trust me, we have a very good argument. We have a very good team behind this. And we really think we have a very good shot at winning these cases. But in order to make this viable for the lawyers, because these claims aren't going to be that big, we need to stockpile enough claims that this actually makes sense for this to go forward. Because we're going to be putting a lot of time, a lot of hours, a lot of money, a lot of manpower, woman power into these claims, and we're not charging an hourly rate or a retainer up front. So it's going to be a lot of work, and the risk is on the lawyers, as we said. But we're used to this. It's very much how personal injury practice is already run. And by the way, we have lots of experience with insurance litigation. One of the biggest cases I've ever settled was a disability claim, and so we're very experienced in reading policy language and in litigating policy issues. What we call coverage issues. That's part and parcel of what a personal injury attorney is very used to doing, because this claim has come up all the time. In the 40 years I've been practicing, I can't remember a month where some insurance company didn't disclaim for some reason or another on a tort case, and we had to get heavily into the policy language. So that's something we commonly do. We have real expertise on that. So this is just more or less along the same lines of what we've always done. The big difference here is that most people would typically use a business lawyer for this, but this is not something that's going to lend itself for your typical business lawyer to do. It's not worth it for him to do. You would pay him so much per hour. You would spend $100,000 in legal fees to collect $100,000 or $150,000. It's not worth it. The way to go with this is by the contingency fee system, which is what it's set up to do, and to do a mass tort litigation. So we're hoping to get, many of these cases, because the strength is going to be in numbers and the victory is going to be in numbers. And we're already well ahead of the game in that.
Well, listen, you got my attention when you started to say that you're calling up your friends and your family, and you're strongly recommending that they do this. Because obviously, if you're willing to, risk your reputation for your friends and your family, this is something that we should be paying attention to, right?
Well, it's funny because one of my neighbors, she's very clever and intelligent woman. She sort of runs, I guess, her husband's business, and she's asking me some very good and pointed questions, which I welcome. So I did a form email, which I actually wrote it to her, and then I've been copying it and sending it around. And I starts out by, I have to drive past your house every day. Of course, I'm going to do a good job. This is something that I would encourage my closest and dearest friends. In fact, I am encouraging my closest and dearest friends to do. I have no problem telling them to get on board with this. I don't see how they're going to collect money any other way. In fact, one of the restaurants that I went to that you've been to many times with me, I just called him today. His son worked for me, and he's got about 5 or 6 restaurants, and he's sending me all of the policies from all those restaurants because he very much trusts me and wants me to look into this. And I got to see this guy every time I go there to eat, which is once a week. So you better believe we're going to do a good job. And even though it's going to be handled in a multi-district fashion, which is going to be done in a centralized courthouse, I'm going to have to hold the client's hands every step of the way on some of the side issues, and that's where we come in. So we're going to be doing it in our locale. Meaning with our group of cases, wherever they are. And, then the litigation proper is going to be happening in one gigantic litigation using the firm that we're associated with.
Well, listen, I know your time is really valuable. I know how busy you are these days, so I do appreciate you carving out some time. Just two more questions, and then we can sort of close it up here. Now, with I'm a local business owner as well, and I represent many small businesses, not big businesses. I represent a lot of small businesses. But here's the one differentiator: some of my clients have been affected indirectly, and some of them have been directly affected in the sense that because of the shutdown, they were forced to shut down. Is there a difference when it comes to this case right now that we're talking about?
Absolutely, and that's where the battleground is going to be. The first issue is coverage. So this is how these things work. The first issue is going to be, is there coverage at all? Insurance companies are saying no. So they want to cut this off right in the beginning. There's no coverage. We don't even want to hear your claim, right? You don't have coverage for that.
Why would they do that? These insurance companies are supposed to be like our friend.
Yeah, well, you're in good hands. You know how I feel about that, but we're a good neighbor. No. You're a good neighbor when it suits them to pay and they pay on their terms. But listen, what is going to happen is there's going to be a coverage issue that's going to be decided first. Yeah. Is there coverage or is there not? A, yes. B, no. What we're hoping for the A, yes. That's going to be the big win in the centralized location. Mm-hmm. The next level then is going to be exactly what you said, right? Do I have a loss that is from the government shutdown, or do I have a loss from the pandemic, or do I have a loss from other avenues of problematic behavior? Just the fact that people are, acting strange or not engaging in activity, or it's the time of year when my business typically dips, or I have other problems. I mismanaged the business, or competition is eating my lunch because, I'm not caught up on all the latest technology. There could be a million reasons why these claims are defensible, even though there's coverage. And that's why you need lawyers involved here, because they're just not going to roll over and stop paying you. Now, what could happen is there could be a settlement in which there's some kind of a grid or a matrix, an equation for which you plug in certain values, years of being in business, amount of your policy, amount of lost income, seasonal variations, any number of factors, which will determine what the outcome is going to be in terms of actual dollar amount. But that's where that's what they say, the devil is in the details. Yeah. That's where the litigation is going to be, and where there's going to be some room for advocacy. And that's what lawyers do. So we'll be advocating for our clients for a higher, echelon of recovery. And of course, the insurance company will be advocating for a lower echelon of recovery. And that's how these things work. There's always a give and take.
Yeah. Now, unlike the application process for businesses to apply, like the CARES Act, the PPP loan, it was really complicated. It was confusing for a lot of businesses. It required a tremendous amount of effort and time and coordinating lots of different people. It seemed like, based on this conversation, you have been able to streamline the process, and it's really as simple as an email, a phone call to you, giving you the insurance policy, and then the business owner doesn't have to worry about anything else.
I don't think I could have said it any better than that. There's no formal application process. You have to email me your policy. I review the policy, or my team reviews the policy. If we decide that we want your case, we send you probably an e-retainer to sign. You sign it, and we're off and running.
Pretty simple. We also actually built out a dedicated website for this, for people can go. There's some resources, but primarily it's used for people to submit an application for you and one of your team members to review. People can go to businessinterruptionapplication.com. So if you own a business, and even if you're confident you have this business interruption insurance, or you're not sure, I think that the recommendation here is that every business should pay you and have you and your team just review the policy on behalf of that business.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, every single business that's been affected. Look, if you are making more money than you ever made before during this pandemic because you own a trucking business, obviously you're not filing a claim. Okay, right. That's the rare exception. Anybody who has been hurt by this pandemic, by the government shutdown, by losing income because of either of those things and if they have insurance, and pretty much everybody has this rider in their policy, their business policy, and they should check with their broker, send me the policy, just send it to us, scan it, take a picture of it, whatever it takes, and let us review it. There's no cost. It's a free review. If we think you have a good case, we'll tell you. My whole team is going to be reviewing these. We're going to have piles of people reviewing this stuff. We're going to throw everything we have at it because, first of all, the courts are generally closed for the most part. So we have time to do this. So we're going to be all over this. We're going to still be practicing our personal injury practice. But, since there's no activity, there's a lot less accidents, a lot less driving, a lot less construction. And so we're going to be focusing on this. We have the resources. We have the manpower. And we have what it takes to get this done. And we're hooked up with the #1 firm that's already going to be on the steering committee that has actually reached out to us. They want our involvement. They want us involved. And so we're working with them. And they reached out to us. We didn't reach out to them. So they selected us to be part of this, and we're happy to do it. And we'll see if this works. We think it will. Like I said, it's no guarantees. That's why it's a contingency fee. We're not charging you any money. And the strength is in the numbers. If we get enough people, we can force a settlement like a class action. It's not a class action. It's like a class action. It's just what's considered a multi-district mass litigation. And we're going to be at the forefront of this. And so we want you to submit your cases to us. There's no obligation, but I think you'd be very wise to do that. And we're looking to help people. And so to get the country back on track, that's what we do.
As part of your closing remarks, I always think it's important to help people understand if they actually would qualify for this. I don't think it's always enough to say if you own a business, but you had mentioned your dentist, someone who's a masseuse. What about these salons that have been closed? What about restaurants that have been open? Can you just right now, just as part of your closing statement, just give some more examples, talk to these people right now who might be watching this, or even people that know of businesses like yourself. You know how important this is. You're getting on the phone, you're calling your neighbors, you're calling your friends who have businesses and say, hey, this is available. Let's arm people with some further information here and let them know who should be applying, and should we go ahead and actually pick up the phone and call our friends and say, call Dan Buttafuoco.
Well, if you care about people, you should want them to not go bankrupt, because that's what we're talking about here. And the economy, the United States economy, is very important. The strength of our country is largely dependent on our business acumen and our ability to produce. And so, yes, this, as far as businesses that are affected the most, clearly restaurants, any service industry where personal contact is necessary, physical therapy offices, non-essential medical care, elective surgery, cosmetic, plastic surgeons, cosmetic dermatologists, chiropractic offices, anything with hands-on, the hotel industry severely affected, anything that's been forced to shut down by the government, the dentist's office, anything where people have been unable to open their businesses, pizzerias, you name it, because of this pandemic, but mainly because of the government shutdown. Those are the people that have the best cases. That doesn't mean other places don't. If you have a marina, marinas were shut. I know I have a small boat, and they couldn't get my boat in the water, a little tiny 20-foot boat I use for fishing, but they wouldn't put my boat in the water because they were closed. They finally were able to reopen. So yeah, there's going to be a lot of those types of businesses that were deemed non-essential and were closed down by government fiat, and that's what's going to suffer the most and have the best business interruption claims. So if you fall into that category, you should call us. You probably should call us right away. And the email is dbuttafuoco@buttafuocolaw.com. Really should send us your policy. Let us look at it. It's free of charge. And we really think we can help you. Again, it's no guarantee we're going to win these cases. It's like any other high-risk litigation. The lawyer takes all the risk, and the strength is in the numbers. So we're looking to do these cases. We're partnered up with some great people, and they reached out to us. They want us to work with them, and they know we can do it, and we're more than willing to do it.
Yeah, just to clarify, we're talking about businesses who have these insurance policies, right? If you're a business and you don't have an insurance policy, this is not something for them, right?
Well, I mean, I can't imagine a business that wouldn't have some type of insurance. You have to call your broker and find out if I have business interruption insurance. And your broker is obligated to tell you, and that's an easy enough call to make. But pretty much it's in every policy. It's usually not a gigantic part of the coverage. You know, most businesses focus on fire insurance and flood insurance and those things. But as part of that type of coverage, you do have business interruption coverage. And it's usually not a real gigantic amount. And that's why, another reason why this should be handled in this way, because it's not going to be worth it for individual businesses to hire their typical business lawyers and pay them $400 or $500 an hour, which is what these guys get, to bring a case that's going to run up a huge legal bill. And then you don't know if you're going to win. And then it's going to get transferred to the multi-district litigation central part anyway, and it's going to be taken from the lawyer's own hands. And so you're going to spend a lot of money for no reason at all. You're going to end up in the multi-district litigation, and the firms that are on the steering committee are going to end up with these cases anyway. Well, we're just telling you, give it to us, and we'll babysit it for you. We'll get it to the right people. Doesn't cost you anything up front, and we will, charge you only if we win. Now, will we win? Only God knows the answer to that question, but we think we have a pretty good shot. We have some creative legal arguments here. We think they're going to fly. We think the climate is right. We think the judiciary is leaning towards a public policy of helping businesses. And I think insurance companies have a right to be concerned, and I think they're going to want to settle. But, this is based on years of experience dealing with insurance companies, but I don't have a crystal ball, so I can't guarantee anything. But I think you'd be foolish not to try, at least give it a try. Because I know when I put my business interruption claim in, they just flat out said you don't have coverage, which, is based on this pandemic exclusion. And we think we have a way around that.
Well, all right. So just in conclusion here, step one, Dan, we're recommending step one, call your broker, get a hold of your policy, ask your broker if in fact you have this business interruption insurance on your policy. And then if you're not comfortable doing that, or you don't know, then one could then just be reach out to Dan Buttafuoco and his team, right?
Yeah. You wouldn't be comfortable talking to your own broker, or you wouldn't be comfortable pulling up your own policy. I mean, I've already had some doctors that I know and businesses that I deal with, they just told their office manager, send Dan the policy immediately. That's what everyone's doing. Send Dan the policy. Send Dan the policy. Email him the policy. I'm already getting them. So, that's, if you have any kind of infrastructure in your business, just tell your office manager, send Dan the policy.
Yeah, that sounds like a new hashtag campaign. Hashtag send Dan the policy.
I'll leave that to you.
All right, well, listen, thank you again so much for joining us and to clarifying some of these really tough questions I know business owners have as it relates to the business interruption insurance. And I know that a lot of people are going to be excited about reaching out to you.
Yeah, well, make businesses work again.
Exactly. Well, listen, Dan, thanks again. And guys, listen, thanks for tuning in and joining us today. There's two people we're talking with. One, people that are watching this right now who are business owners. I strongly recommend that you reach out to Dan. Everyone can go to this website right now, businessinterruptionapplication.com. You can fill in some very basic information, and you can have an attorney actually review your policy for free. This is something that Dan and his office are willing to do. But also, even if you don't own a business, but if you do know someone who owns a business, like Dan was saying, if you truly do care about them, it's worth the phone call, at least arming them now with this option and then letting them decide whether or not they want to apply. But it really does seem like this is going to be something that really helps local markets around the entire country.
And that's the goal.
That is the goal. Absolutely. Well, Dan, thank you again. And everyone, thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of Ask Your Injured Lawyer for a special edition where we were talking about business interruption insurance. Until next time, guys, everyone stay safe, be well, and help us spread the word about business interruption insurance. Take care, guys.
Stay safe and healthy, everyone.